agree with everything you said, and I appreciate you having me on.
So let's get into kind of the background of Consciously, and let's talk about why you've made that kind of your mission and how you got here, and you're doing it with your partner, and working a little bit with my wife. I know how committed you have to be to both the business and to the relationship to make those things work. So I know that for those people who make it through, it's always something that's special and to them. So catch us up on kind of how you got here and why this has become your life's work for now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess I'll start at the beginning. About 10 years ago, I felt suffocated in life, and I was always interested in spiritual things, and I had started to learn meditation, but I wasn't getting the traction that I wanted from it. And so I wound up moving to China, and I stayed there for about 4 months, and I studied Tai Chi and Qigong with Shaolin monks. Then I came back to the States and went down to Escondido to a self-realization fellowship ashram, which was yogic meditation. So I lived with monks and yogis for the next 6 months and spent hours a day in meditation, contemplation, service. And the year that those two happened during was it was my year diving deep into the spiritual aspect of life and really going after, what is this thing called enlightenment, this thing called self-realization? Is it a legend? Is it real? Is it something that like everyone can tap into? And I started to have experiences that profoundly changed my perspective of life and how I operate on a day-to-day basis. And so that year is the dive off into the deep end. After that, I wound up going to school and getting a religious studies degree with the emphasis in consciousness studies. So I continued down the same path. I wound up going to Ghana and Indonesia, studying their spirituality and their cultures during that time. And then I came back to California, and I went back to the ashram for another 5 months, and I wanted to make the decision of whether or not I was going to become a monk or not. It had changed my life so deeply that that was my thought process when I was away at school and traveling and all that stuff. I was always thinking, well, I'm going to become a monk. Now, I wouldn't be standing here today if I had made that decision, but it was something I sat on for quite a long time, for several years. And then I left the ashram, and not much later I met Melanie McDaniel, my partner in life, partner in business. And you're right, it is definitely a commitment to being in a relationship as well as working with that person in a relationship. And it's something that has helped us grow so much on the aspect, which is also a part of our spirituality. And then, been teaching meditation ever since. I got into sports performance coaching. And just a lot of different things. I'm always someone who's a student of life, gone to a Vipassana retreat, got into plant medicine for a while, been sitting in fire ceremonies and sweat lodges and stuff with Lakota song carriers. And it's just, I'm a dabbler in a lot of things. And along that way, we founded Consciously, which is a holistic life business. And so we help people physical, mental, emotional, spiritual stuff, anything from nutrition, meditation, lifestyle coaching, emotional release, spiritual counseling. Most of our clients, it's all of the above, and they work with both of us. And it's really powerful to be able to send people to Mel because she's much more equipped to have certain conversations than she sends some to me. And so it's a very synergistic thing that we've created. And we absolutely love talking about spirituality and spreading the message of going deeper into the capital S self and helping other people experience a truly profound state of being.
Yeah, I think, one thing that's come up definitely for me over these last couple of days and talking with so many people is that this is such a new and maybe radical idea, at least for some. I think that once you make that decision, it seems far less radical. But if you were to, I think one of the words that came up the other day was being counterculture and being against, what the norm is. And so I'm curious about how you bring some, whether it's simplicity to it or whether some layman's, see to it or really, if you were trying to explain this to somebody who's never been into that world and doesn't, thinking about fire ceremonies, and they're wondering if there's, marshmallows and s'mores there, So what how do you, what's the introduction to that world for people, and how do you kind of, how do you ease them in, or introduce them to it so that they have an open mind and the right perspective?
Sure. Everyone comes to it differently. Honestly, some people come to it through learning about nutrition, and they just get really interested in health, and they realize mental health's a part of that and spiritual health's a part of that. And then so they just keep going down that rabbit hole. Other people might have read a book like The Untethered Soul or The Power of Now, and they're like, whoa, there's an entire other way of looking at life through this. And so we get people coming from a lot of different directions. In my talk that I'm going to be doing at the One Life Conference, it's called The Simplicity of the Spiritual Path. And it's not just for beginners. Anyone can come because, quite frankly, what I'm sharing is I operated in my spiritual and meditation practice a certain way for 8 years. And I got great results, but there was always something missing. And I think that's something that people can relate to in life, is that a lot of us operate from a place where we feel like something's missing in life, that no matter how externally successful we become, there still seems to be some void that we're still trying to fill. There was this thing that we thought it was going to bring us, but it didn't. Some people call it happiness. Other people call it peace, some fulfillment, whatever it may be. And so when that finally registered and clicked for me, and I saw why I was keeping fulfillment at an arm's distance, it changed me. It changed how I work with people. It changed how I have certain conversations, and it became so simple. And so spirituality and all of these, esoteric teachings from thousands of years ago don't need to be extremely complicated. They can be talked about in, modern terminology in a way that everyone can relate to and understand. And that opens the door for everyone to walk through. And that's really what my goal is with this talk, is to make it accessible no matter how much practice someone has. I mean, you could be meditating for 20 years and hear something that takes your practice 10 times deeper in a half hour. And then this could also be the door opener, and it saves you a decade of searching, that you just go much deeper, much quicker. So that is my goal and my intent with this, but it's, how people get there is always unique. We all have our own unique journey. And that's what I love about the human experience. That makes it fun.
Yeah. So one thing that you mentioned was the fact that people, come to it through some sort of learning, or some, they gain some sort of perspective and gain some sort of insight. And in trying to play, the perspective of the listener, what are they looking for? What are they missing, or what are they lacking in? And what problems do you find that this is maybe the, for lack of a better term, the medicine for, right? Or when someone thinks about like I'm having this issue, a lot of them don't think that what you're talking about are their solutions. So what are some of those people going through?
Well, the main thing that we see on a day-to-day basis, and this is especially in the Western world today, is that when we're born, we begin to be programmed with knowledge. This is just, it's not good, it's not bad, it's the way it is. We learn language, we learn culture, we learn society, we learn education system, all this stuff. And it comes from so many different angles. And what it really is we're learning opinions about that. We're learning a belief system about that based off of those who are raising us, the people that we interact with, the pocket of the culture that we grow up in. And so this creates programming. This creates neurosynaptic connections in the brain. This creates perspective. And the challenge with that is that we learn what should be done, who we should be, the right way to live versus the wrong way to live, what's rewarded versus what's punished, what's acceptable versus what's unacceptable. So a lot of us step onto this path of trying to perfect that which we should be. And we form our own opinions and our own beliefs about the way we should be in this life, that success equals financial success, that a good relationship equals this. And we create this entire belief system of how we're supposed to go through life. And I know that almost everyone listening can relate to that in one way or another. And we start operating from this, I will be enough when, I will be whole when, I will be fulfilled when, I will be successful when. And it creates this lack. And what that literally is coming from is I'm not enough now, and I need to be somewhere else. And what that does is it creates rejecting of who we are now. We resist who we are right now. We resist life as it is right now because we're always trying to get somewhere else, and it displaces us from this present moment. And so the spiritual conversation is as simple as that. We talk about the resistance that's created through our programming. We talk about becoming present, and we talk about the solution to those things, or presence is one of the solutions, but we talk about how simple it can be to change that. Now, simple doesn't necessarily mean easy, but it can be incredibly simple to change our program, to change how we view the world, to change how we interact with life on a daily basis. And that is something, no matter what category someone is experiencing this lack in, or experiencing this need to be something else than they are, is pretty universal, especially in the Western culture. So it's taking that conversation, the pathology, the psychology of kind of the human condition today, and saying, hey, what is this? Where's this leading us to? And how can we shift that course?
You mentioned the idea of conditioning, and I think that one thing that I've always, realized is that there needs to be, before any of the work can be done, there needs to be that perspective, right? They need to have the right mindset, or that, so in terms of conditioning, what do you find is kind of keeping people where they don't want to be, and what I've found with that is that they probably don't even realize it. So like, how does conditioning play out in this whole path that you're kind of talking about?
It plays a pretty significant role, and I think there's a really big step to be done, and that's taking the step of awareness. And so that's as you were saying, it's becoming conscious of our programming, conscious of who we are, mind, body, spirit, and really diving into that, and recognizing that, bringing that from subconscious to conscious, and recognizing how we operate, our belief systems, all that stuff. And there's a couple different ways to go about proceeding from there. A lot of coaches and people, then they then go into the beliefs, they then go into the mode of operation, the habit patterns and stuff like that, which is a lot of stuff we do as well. But there's a trap there, which is, okay, now I understand that I'm operating from this place of lack, this place of fear, this belief system that I can only be enough when I reach the top of the mountain. So what am I going to do about it? Well, I'm going to learn this new belief, and I'm going to change my beliefs. I'm going to change my perspective. I'm going to get all this new ideology and start practicing this new way of life. The challenge is, and what I see a lot of coaches missing the point on, is that can create the exact same belief system. It's just a new spinning wheel that we stepped into. I will be enough when I've let go of all my beliefs. I will be enough when I've changed my habit patterns. I will be enough when I have this new way of life. And it just creates the same thing over and over again. So what I talk about in the talk is how to step out of that cycle completely, how to get out of the spinning hamster wheel of trying to get somewhere else, but we're just perpetually stuck where we are, which is why a lot of people, even at the end of the day of doing a lot of work on themselves, still feel like something's missing. It's because that's creating a mode of operation. And they're just trading one thing for the other, but the mode is still there.
Yeah, it's definitely a process that I think we are all going through at some level. And what I'm finding in having these conversations over the last couple of days is that it's becoming more and more of a topic that people are talking about and caring about, and So that awareness hopefully is becoming easier for people. What are some of the steps, like if someone could take some action, right? Or maybe they want to get a head start before the conference in October. Like, what are some activities or efforts, or I don't know, like some favorite things that you do that you feel just consist of that work, but are making a difference for you or the people that you're working with?
The number one technique I like to use is meditation. And there's different types of meditation that people can learn about. There's very active meditation and, visualization, affirmation, stuff like that, which I endorse and I like. But there's also very passive meditation, which is just the awareness practice of whatever comes up that's not right or it's not wrong. I'm just becoming aware of how who I am and what's going on. And I mean, that can be as simple as spending 3 minutes, just setting a timer, 3 minutes. For the next 3 minutes, do not think. And it's rare when I do that with people, when someone comes back and says, I didn't think at all. It was deeply peaceful and wonderful. Most people come back being like, that was really hard. And then we open that up and say, okay, why? And they start to recognize that, well, then I started thinking about what does it mean to not think? And then what we start to see is that we have this kind of, we have this voice going on all the time that most people are identified with, that they think that we're the one who runs this voice. When in truth, it kind of it'll just go even if you want it to stop. It just doesn't stop. And so we get a little bit of distance from that restlessness. We get a little bit of distance from this identity with this thing that we have. So we have a mind. It doesn't necessarily mean we are the mind. And getting a little bit of distance can give us so much power to recognize that all of these loop patterns, these thought processes, and these habit patterns, not only can they be changed, but they're not us in the first place. And so a really simple thing is meditation, learning meditation. And there's a lot of great techniques out there. We teach meditation. We teach both secular meditation, meaning non-spiritual. It doesn't have anything to do with, religious or spiritual traditions, as well as spiritual meditation. And so there's a lot out there for people to kind of find and look into. But I think if there was one practice that I utilize with all my clients the most, it is absolutely that. And then there's, journaling, awareness practices, clarity things. There's a lot of different stuff to do it. But if it was like, hey, how could I better come prepared to your lecture, to your talk at the conference, it would be dabble with meditation, start to get your own experience. So you can ask questions from experience, not from, oh, I kind of get your concept, let me ask an intellectual question. No, I've tried to apply it, and these are the roadblocks I've hit, and now I can ask from an actual place of understanding what my process is going to look like. I find those questions to be far more useful for people.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that I've found that people who are very much involved in this kind of work, they call it a practice, and it's very much that, and that it's something that you are doing over and over, and that you are practicing at. And so I think that's just a huge opportunity. Here, I want to thank you for hopping on. I'd love for you to share where people can catch up with you. Before I briefly introduce Kelly a little bit, can you share where they can get caught up with Consciously and what you're doing?
Yeah, it's super simple, consciously.org. And if you want to look at our stuff, that's where it is. If you want to get a hold of us, our contact page there, we're the ones who look at it. So that's the number one resource to go to. And then just reach out if you want to from there.
Wonderful. Kelly, thank you for joining us. You are looking and spry, and I know you've had quite a few calls already today. So thank you for making this part of your day. We've been doing, I've been having a lot of conversations with the presenters, and the way that the schedule's lined up, we've just kind of been mashing them up into some super streams. But I think that it's allowed us to have some conversations between the presenters, and I'd love to get kind of your perspective on a lot of what we were talking about was, a spiritual journey and kind of growing and developing spiritually. And we've talked a lot about that over these last couple of days. But really what I love about Harry is the practicality of it, and finding, things that are maybe not as ideal as we want them to be, whether it's our programming, or whether it's, our self-beliefs or doubts or thoughts or whatever it is. And then utilizing that to improve our business or our health, or whatever it is that we're trying to improve. So I'm curious, Kelly, how that, like, if and how the spiritual development or side of that has played a role in your success, because I know you're very much a go getter, and so I'm wondering if that has shown up for you at all.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm glad that I've snowed you in being a go getter, because I'm absolutely probably the opposite now. I feel like I have hacked life in the sense that, I run a pretty good sized company, but I feel like I don't work very much and don't have to work that hard in order to be successful. So I would tell you that my awakening absolutely started as more of a necessity. 20 years ago, I was that overachiever. I measured my enoughness on how productive I was being and how much money I had, and other things in life, got the best of me, with my mom being diagnosed with dementia at a very early age. And quite frankly, I looked at how she was living her life and how I was living my life, and they're very similar. A lot of times we do follow in our parents' footsteps, and I had to start asking myself, what was the purpose of working as hard as I was? Because I was definitely working 60 to 70 hours, a week at that point. And, I had the bank account and the lifestyle to support that at that point. And so my spiritual awakening really just came out of, absolute necessity. I was on my knees. I was in a place where I knew that I couldn't keep up at the pace that I was. And I entered into the consciousness space first, and I'm grateful that happened. My first book that I ever read when it came to, self-help or personal development was Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And, I picked it up and quite frankly, I was like, what on earth is he talking about? Like, what do you mean is like, I'm not my thoughts. Like, what? I had always been my thoughts, and my thoughts led me to be highly productive and had led me to just, achieve at a higher level. And so as I opened that door, I wouldn't have ever guessed that, I would end up going down this spiritual journey, because I was so type A. I was so controlling. I was so dependent on self and not source, that I really just had no idea what I was in store for. So, my spirituality now, I'm very faith-based. So I'm one of the few in the, I would say, the space that I exist in that's completely Christian, but at the same time open and just, to other beliefs and accepting of other beliefs, and believe in so many, whether it's Buddhist or other principles that people allow to guide their life. But, it is what makes me who I am. My ability to feel whole and to feel enough and to continue to create the life that I know that I'm destined to, all is rooted in truly my spiritual beliefs.
I'd love to get your response if you had. I know Harry mentioned, I believe you mentioned the Power of Now a little earlier on our call. So it's just interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. For the first year, I wanted to hunt that man down. I was so angry at him because I was an overthinker before I read Power of Now. And when you start to overthink, you're overthinking, and you have two thoughts instead of one, it's exhausting. And, by the next couple years, though, once you learn how to navigate, really separating from thought and being able to just kind of discern the ones that serve you and are coming from your highest and most authentic self from the ones that are ego-based or coming from other places, it gets a lot easier.
Well said. Well said. And nice to meet you as well, Kelly.
Nice to meet you, Harry.
So I want to thank you, Harry, for hanging out and spending some time with us. I know I asked for a half hour, so you gave me 8 more minutes than I asked for. And so I appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to hanging out in October.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Nice to meet you, Kelly. Have a great talk between you two. And yeah, I guess we'll be seeing you both in October.
Yeah. Come hang out with all of us.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. Take care.